to the Texas Law Dog Podcast, where we will get you off, literally and legally.
This is a parody podcast. Any and all content should not be construed as formal legal advice used for educational, marketing, and solicitation purposes only. The Texas Law Dog will not get you off literally or legally.
Well, good morning, guys. Welcome to episode 1 of the Texas Law Dog Podcast. I'm here with the Law Dog himself. My name is Akash. I'll be your co-host. And
it's my brown brother from another mother.
Brown brother from another mother, yes, sir. And the purpose of this podcast is we primarily want to give we were kind of looking for something like this that already existed on the market, and we found that there's no one really giving the general public information about what exactly they need to be doing in terms of if they're getting arrested or any interaction with the justice system or the law. And from firsthand experience from, someone who has experienced both as a criminal lawyer and as a degenerate himself, no, I'm just kidding. We have the Texas
criminal turned criminal lawyer.
Turned to the good side. We have the Law Dog himself. So
the good side.
the light side of the force.
Yeah, a lot of district attorneys would agree with that.
I'm excited, guys. But again, just to throw you out there. So I mean, today we're just gonna be just spitballing different topics, main things. But this is kind of for y'all. So I want our listeners to kind of be engaged in the comments. Let us know what more you guys want to hear about and what exactly, if there are any pressing questions, be sure to, like, subscribe, and talk to us in the comments. And we're going to be very active in the comments, responding to all those things as well.
It's time to give the power back to the people, my friend.
Exactly.
And that's what I do. I mean, I get to hold the government accountable for a living.
Yeah.
It's kind of a dangerous job when you actually think about it. I actually piss people off for a job. Well, vigilante for a fee, but yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because people ask me, like, why did you pick criminal defense, as a job? And a lot of the public actually has exposure more to this side of the law than like people that do real estate transactions and boring shit, because this stuff's on TV. It's just portrayed incorrectly. And I think that, the first thing I tell juries or jury pools whenever I'm picking a jury, like I stand up, the DA is giving their spiel and they're like half asleep. And I'm like, all right, everybody stand up. I like yell at them and they just pop to attention. Like, that's how I know I've got them. And they're like, all right, I want you to repeat after me these 2 words, not guilty. And they all say it. And I'm like, that is the correct choice. And they all laugh. And I'm like, all right, everybody have a seat. I just don't, I want to have a conversation with you all. I try to be personable, because when you don't have the law on your side, like, my job isn't to prove my client's innocence. It's to hold the government accountable to its burden of proving their guilt. So a lot of people think but a lot, like the majority of people go into court and they see somebody sitting there and they're like, man, that guy probably did it. But what it becomes is, who's got the better lawyer? And ultimately, like, that's my job, is to advocate on your behalf and to work some magic that you don't know how to do.
So, I mean, do you have any specific examples of things that were kind of eye-opening for you in terms of while you were, let's say, still a civilian, versus on the other side of the law now?
I mean, look, dude, I had it easier than most. I was a white upper middle class kid growing up, right? So my experience is completely different than maybe even yours, or maybe even a young black kid like in the hood. It doesn't matter who you are. You're gonna have a different experience with the police, unfortunately, because there are varying levels of criminal justice in this country. I think that there's different levels for everybody depending on who you are. So I think my experience growing up was, well, number one, I love to argue. So my mom's like, you need to be a lawyer. I want to be a pilot. I have terrible eyesight. So I was like, fuck it, I need to be a lawyer. And I'm really good at arguing. And I was like, I loved politics. I studied political science in college, and it was a worthless degree unless you go to DC and work for those scumbags. So I decided I was going to go to law school, and try and craft a life for myself. I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I always was like, when I was 5 years old, I would be selling bags of rocks on the corner to people driving by, and they would buy them because they felt bad for me, but I was just always trying to like make a side hustle and just try to make it work. So that I didn't have to rely on anybody to, live. And when I graduated law school, I came home and studied for the bar, and a week before I passed, I ended up getting a DWI. So I've been on both sides of the glass, and I'm fortunately, I then had to get a job to pay a really good lawyer to get it dismissed. And now I use that as an example for everyone that I'm talking to, and that, look, I've been on both sides of the glass. I've used a roll of toilet paper as a pillow in jail, and it sucked. And I absolutely get where you're coming from and how scared you are, because your entire future. Look, I was going to go work for the DA's office, and it just completely fucked my life over. Like, I had to completely start over. I didn't have any job prospects. I think I applied to like 75 jobs. This is in 2013. I didn't get a single fucking interview. I mean, maybe a couple. I went and I tried to interview with these traffic lawyer consortium, as their lackey that would go from shitty municipal court to municipal court. Not saying municipal courts are shitty, obviously, but they're a necessary way to fund our counties and municipalities, obviously, for your tickets and your heinous crimes. But other than that, I mean, it was eye-opening to me just how much the people don't know about their own rights and the little rights that they have left, and B, they don't know how to interact with the police correctly. And that's just kind of the main reason that you and I we were talking about doing this, is we wanted to just help inform the public as to the day-to-day stuff that you otherwise don't see. I mean, this is not shit you're going to see or hear about on court TV. It's not stuff that you're going to, watch on ABC network television. You're going to get the inside track. Obviously I can't go into specifics about, my specific cases and stuff like that, but you'll get a general idea kind of how, I'll run as we go through these episodes. I'll go from everything from when I was a law student defending a guy who beat up his girlfriend because she stole some of his fried chicken, to taking a felony choking case when I was 1 year out of law school for $1,000 and trying it and having no fucking clue what I was doing, and ending up
I'm a lot more interested in the fried chicken case.
It's that was a fun one, man. That's when I decided I knew I wanted to do this for a living.
That's awesome, bro. So, is there anything that you would say is the most common misunderstanding that you've had to see in terms of people, just in general, in terms of the justice system, or what lawyers do?
The most common misunderstanding is that if you're poor, the cops are fucking awful, and if you're rich, the cops are the only thing standing between you and the poors. And honestly, that is a massive dichotomy. It's one that we have not addressed in this country, and
it's a real issue. It's not like a pretend. There are stratified systemic differences between how poor people, the justice system treats.
Look at the data. I mean, right. Jesus. I mean, look at one of the presidential candidates wrote a crime bill that put a ton of nonviolent drug offenders who were primarily black men in jail, and self-admittedly on the debate last night, he said it was a mistake. And it was a massive mistake. The war on drugs, all of that shit is failed. I mean, and the people who are middle class to upper middle class to rich don't get it, because they've never interacted with the system. They've never had the cops drive through their neighborhoods all the time looking for people to arrest or people to fuck with. That's just not their experience. I mean, because if you look at the nitty gritty of it, it's the majority of, I'd say 98% of police officers are good people. They are 99% of them are good people, but there's something about some people, man, that just want to sign up to, that's maybe just worth exploring. The deeper psychological issue, we can get into that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bro.
You hope that most people sign up to help people, but there are a couple of bad apples that sign up to hurt people, unfortunately. So that is proven. We've seen it obviously throughout the decades, and it's something that obviously needs to be addressed, man. If it was up to me, every single police, like if you're a government employee, there's so much lack of transparency these days. The public is in the dark about so much bullshit, and it's unfortunate because there's not many people that speak out against it. It's dangerous. It ends up costing people their jobs. It ends up costing people their lives sometimes, like if they go too far. And man, when you look at the corruption in anything, it runs deep. Unfortunately, it don't matter who you vote for. Odds are, if you follow the money, usually you're going to find something dirty. I mean, when you go up the chain high enough, and a lot of times that's why you're seeing a lack of transparency in all of this stuff. You look at Breonna Taylor, you look at George Floyd, you look at all that, these upcoming cases. I mean, those are just media bias, recency, like stuff. But, even down in Houston, we've got cases where we have a full-on training day cop that just got arrested for essentially lying on over 100 cases that put a bunch of people in prison. And
this happened recently.
Yeah. And pull it up if you want. Gerald Goins is his name, and he's an alleged defendant still, and but he is an HPD narcotics officer he's in a world of shit right now. But essentially they busted him. There was a no-knock warrant done on this couple over in a poor neighborhood of Houston. They alleged that they had heroin and they were crack dealers and stuff like that. They went in there. They ended up didn't finding any drugs. They found a little bit of weed and a little, like a baggie of coke. And it turns out like the entire situation was like training day akin. I think 2 officers have been fired and 2 are under indictment. But I mean, it's everywhere. You look at any major metropolis, you're going to find stories like that. And the media isn't going to cover it necessarily. Like they are going to cover what they want to, but digging into the nitty gritty of it is something that's, it can be, sometimes it's dangerous because a lot of people, it's power. It's, you've got a lot of moving parts at the top of society, and a lot of the people that just are trying to live their lives and go about, their days and work their jobs and make it to the first and make rent just don't have time to comprehend all of this. So kind of my goal is to give y'all maybe like a Cliff's Notes version into, the seedy underworld that is criminal defense, because it's a wild time and it's something different every day. That's why I love doing it.
I mean, if there's one major takeaway that you want people to have from this podcast, what would you say that is, or that it would be?
Hold your local government leaders accountable.
Cool.
Fix
That's
the
important.
problem from the stem up. Because I mean, we don't have good people running for office anymore. We do at the local level sometimes, but fuck, man, if you look at the federal level, like it's all fugazi. Red versus blue. It's easier to control with 2 colors than an entire rainbow.
Yeah,
and
bro.
So if you zoom out, it's so easy to see. It's all just WWE now, and it's stupid because there's a lot of people that buy into it, and unfortunately, it's just propaganda on both sides.
Dude, I remember watching House of Cards like 3-4 years ago, like. And watching an article, reading an article a couple of years ago where someone off the record was like, it's shocking how similar it actually is. It is to real life, like all the favors and the bullshit and the politics, is actually just people, everyone doing each other favors. And
look, man, most people don't. The richest person someone knows they've never met, right? People are gonna go to Thanksgiving this year and they're gonna argue about Nancy Pelosi, someone that they've never fucking met, someone that doesn't give a shit about them, and yet they're gonna fight about it, and it makes you wonder, well, what are we actually talking about here? And so when you look at it from, well, there might be 2 justice systems in play. There's one for us and there's one for them. And when you get into the upper echelons of society and the people that control stuff, divide and conquer is their strategy. And so obviously when you put these wedge issues towards the people, like a Breonna Taylor, for instance, I think that brings up a good point about like the no-knock warrant issue. I think that the public needs to be aware of that, like that cops can literally just come and bust into your house if there's someone that says that you're selling drugs out of there. I mean, if you look up, there's a thing called swatting that's like really popular recently amongst these Twitch streamers. Like they get really mad and they'll call the police, like in the person's city. They'll find out like where their address is, or they'll either dox them, which is where you like reveal personal information online, or they'll like call the police and be like, this person's holding someone hostage. They'll send a fucking SWAT team. There's a case in Kansas where a kid opened the door and he got shot and died because somebody swatted him. And it's not talked about, obviously. This shit gets buried up real fast because if you didn't, if people really looked at the deep stemmed issues, it's just control. I mean, this is a means of control. Like the criminal justice system in general, what I found in my years of experience is that for the large part, the large majority of even the assistant district attorneys I work with are great people. It's just that we have a fundamental difference of belief. They think that they are doing the Lord's work by honoring the law written by the legislatures. So like, for instance, I think that the fact that weed's still illegal is asinine. I mean, it's 2020 and we've got how many people still getting fucked with either on probation or whatever, and they're having to hire me just because they're getting a positive test for THC, where it's legal in certain states, and yet it's federally illegal, probably because it would make the alcohol and pharmaceutical industries a hell of a lot less money. So, but that's a conversation for another day.
I mean, let me play devil's advocate, bro. Do you think it would be better for society if we legalize weed better for society as a whole? Like,
it'd be a hit on my bottom line, but honestly, it's the right thing to do. And like a lot of criminal lawyers won't say that because they know, and it already has. I've lost a bunch of money just because, where I practice, they don't even arrest you for finding you with bud. Vape cartridges, right? And shit. Like they'll still take you to jail, but depending on the cop. Now, obviously, it just varies county by county. In Texas, you've got some counties that are living in 1950 and some that are in the present. And it's usually the further rural you get, the more arcane.
The devil's lettuce.
You know what I mean? You gotta be dealing with
the devil's lettuce down here in these parts. Go on, get.
That shit will kill you.
Get out of here.
You should scat now.
Devil's lettuce smoking little.
I need my beer. Now that it's whiskey paleo now, and it is what it is. But literally, it's just an old mindset, and their minds are evolving. And unfortunately, like with the advent of the internet, even it's just been a beauty to see. Well, until recently, you could have debate. The old internet back in the like Wild Wild West. How old are you? Like 25?
Yeah, 25.
So wait, do you even remember like the original memes from like 2000 when they had like Jib Jab, where it was like John Kerry and George Bush, they're making fun of his purple hearts, and it was like just claymation, and I was dancing around, and that was what the internet used to be. It did not used to be Aunt Karen sharing her fucking Thanksgiving recipes and then talking about how there is a global satanic pedophile cabal, right? It's like we don't care, Aunt Karen. Stop fucking talking about that on Facebook. Or it's a battle of my grandmothers to comment on my photo first. So I got off all that shit, man. Like literally everyone that's a millennial is like going away from it, which is hilarious. As far as like the politics in social media I think that's truly, if you look at the root of everything, I mean, that's something we need to explore because it's completely fucked our society. If you look at what it's done to us, man, we're all just self-indulging assholes to each other. And so how are we supposed to fix anything if we're just too busy waiting on our next Amazon Prime delivery, I don't know. It's something that we need to kind of explore on a
And
deeper meta level, I guess,
in
but
terms of
it'll tie into everything.
would you say, I mean, so in terms of like everything we've been talking about today, dude, has there been, I mean, I know COVID has also been really weird for everyone these past couple, but I mean, what has been the biggest surprise for you in terms of just uh how things have, in general, over the past
Man, fuck,
year?
dude. I saw this happening in March and I lost my shit. Like, I was like tinfoil hat. I mean, I literally didn't know what to think.
Yeah, I guess for me, yeah, how unprepared we were, bro. Like how
Well, that's it. And it's like the court system, I mean, from the local to state to the federal level up, we were so fucked. I mean, there was no way there was going to be a winning side here. Like it was a catch-22 for all the federal officials, obviously, but like at a county level, now every single county judge is doing something different. So we have no congruent system to where like it's made my job almost impossible. Number one, because we don't have juries anymore. So juries have been literally cut off since March. And if people don't know, the way that criminal justice and the way that like the court system and the civil side even moves is with juries, because without the threat of trial, you don't move cases. Literally, people are disincentivized to, especially at the civil level where you're making money billing, move cases when you don't have juries, because trial means put up or shut up, and you're either going to believe in your case and you're going to sit there and can try and convince them with a straight face, or you're going to take the deal, or you're going to settle, whatever it is. And you've got to understand that all of our lives, especially like majority of the people, my colleagues, all work for themselves. So we are all small business. There's no like national firm that does criminal defense. You've got your hot shots in New York, LA, and you got like Rusty Hard and Dick DeGear in here, like the Racehorse Haynes, the guys and you see on TV. But for the most part, everybody is a small business owner just trying to get by. And we haven't been able to earn a living, man, because it's been just, if you don't have the court system functioning normally, shit's just going to keep getting delayed. So, man, in Harris County, there's a guy that's still on bond, or he's in custody since 2011, awaiting a murder trial. It's 2020. That's 9 years, and they still haven't tried the case. So you've got, that is indicative of the problem.
Wait, is that legal? How can
Is that legal? It's a great question. Absolutely, according to some person who
his
thinks
lawyer just keeps pushing back the date? Like
no, it's the government, and it's literally, it's just if it's a capital murder, they're going to hold you on a no bond until you have a trial, and for whatever logistical reasons, if they can't find a witness.
I think it's super interesting how you mentioned that without the threat of trial, disincentivizes people from moving the whole thing forward. Like I mean, let's go back and talk about that for a little bit. I don't think so. I'm familiar with how it works, but I don't think a lot of people are familiar.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, so a lot of people are. I don't think. I mean, only because of my line of work. Nothing to do with personal experience or anything. But
that's it.
So with the justice system, bro. So you have your DA and your prosecutor, and then you have your defense attorney, and it's usually So talk about that. The whole
So no, like the whole process. Like, all right. The majority of people fuck up because they don't know their rights to begin with. That's how you end up in cuffs. Let's talk about, let's take DWI. That's a very popular example. It's a very popular crime. Fortunately, it's becoming less popular with the advent of Uber, Lyft, cabs. Literally, when I got mine, I was in a small college town. Everyone drove drunk because there was no way to get around. Literally, I was on student government and I was lobbying our faculty to institute a rideshare program. And these Baptist overlords are like, we don't have a drinking problem here. So of course it didn't happen. But literally, I mean, it was like, if you didn't drive drunk, you weren't going out. And so I either didn't know you or I didn't hang out with you, because that's just what I did. 2 years sober, by the way, last weekend. So we'll get into all that, but thank you. My old life was a complete fucking shit show, and it's going to be entertaining for the listener. I obviously understand that, but it'd also be a good lesson for some youngins out there, I think. And especially if you're a white guy, like middle class white guy, you're probably lost right now. You're not allowed to have an opinion, you know. It's or it's dangerous to have one anyway. Like, that's not you know, just molding to whatever. So obviously it's going to be when you get arrested, it's going to change your life, because that's the first thing I tell someone is, I'm like the dentist. No one wants to fucking pay me, but you need me. And people understand that. I'm not their best friend. You're not, you know, but I do have some friendships with some old clients, but that's just because I saved their fucking lives, and they obviously know that. And I do form relationships with most of my clients to where I care. And you know, a lot of lawyers get caught in the rat race, so they're just trying to make money and move cases. And I saw you know, I've seen people do that. And I knew when I went out on my own, I was just going to kind of craft a different strategy, which is I gave people my cell phone number, for instance. Like, I don't have a secretary. I don't have a middleman. I want you to be able to text me, you know. And that's kind of a really new school approach to lawyering. And but going back into it, so you get arrested, right? We'll take a DWI, for instance. Most people aren't going to remember this, because you don't remember shit when you're hammered. So you're already fucked. Number one, don't drive drunk. Then you won't have to deal with any of this. It goes without saying. But if it's not illegal, however, in Texas to drive after drinking. It is illegal to drive while intoxicated, which if you want to pull up the elements of the crime, I think it's section 4904. I'm probably wrong about that, but as I recall off the top of my head, the state has to prove that on a particular date in a particular county in Texas that you were intoxicated while operating a motor vehicle. So they break down the intoxication definition as the lack of your physical or mental faculties or a blood alcohol concentration level of over 0.08%. So that's the basic crime. And then if you have a blood or a breath test that's under 0.15, it's a class B misdemeanor, which is a maximum punishment of 6 months in jail and a $2,000 fine or a $2,000 fine. And then if you're over 0.15, it becomes a class A misdemeanor, which is a year in jail and or a $4,000 fine. So I already tell people, look, and when MAD changed the law in 2007, the Texas legislature amended it so that you couldn't have deferred adjudication. So as pseudo made DWI.
Quick point: MAD is Mothers Against Drunk.
Mother Against Drug Driving, yeah.
Cool.
So the big lobby, you know, you might remember from back then, like the last major DWI law change, besides the administrative license stuff, which we'll talk about, that all changed last year. But and that because essentially when you're arrested, you get two cases. They take your license and you get the criminal charge. So you're double fucked, and you've got to deal with both. And they're two separate things, but they tie into together, which is why it's essential to call your lawyer like immediately, or get a lawyer immediately if you are arrested for DWI, because you only have 14 days to file an appeal on your license revocation. And at that license appeal, I can get either a lot of valuable information from the officer, or I can either save your license and make sure that the jury knows the officer didn't show up to that license revocation hearing at your criminal trial. So, but back to the DWI stuff. So like if you get pulled over, right, most officers are immediately going to smell alcohol if you've been drinking. They just are. You know, it's training day 101. Like there's a standard field manual called the DWI Detection Standard Field Sobriety Test. I learned this better than they learned it so that I could beat them. And that's essential for anyone who does DWI law. You've got to know how they're trained in order to know how they screw up. Right. Because what generally they're going to do is, if you've been drinking, you always need to deny having had any sort of alcoholic beverage. If you admit that, you're getting out of the car immediately. So the number one thing, and we need to make like a little download guide for these people so that they can just keep this in their visor. But essentially, that way you can kind of have the rundown of what all you should or shouldn't say. What you shouldn't say is, oh yeah, I only had a couple of beers and I'm driving home from wherever. What you should say is,
which is ironically what
everybody's like, oh, it's just 2 beers.
Fucking thinks they're the most.
I could literally get a dime for every time I heard 2 beers. I'd be a rich ass man. I tell you what. And I mean, it's it's true. Literally, everyone's like 2 beers. Nah, it's just 2 beers. Bull fucking shit.
Everyone.
0.29 is not 2 beers,
3,
motherfucker.
Not 1. I only had 2 beers, officer. Like I'm on my.
Oh, dude. I mean, look, when
crazy.
We'll get into my DWI one day. It's not going to be this episode, but it was nasty. And I handed him my Raising Cane's rewards card as my ID. That's how I started the interaction.
This is
not going to be a good night.
Everything you need to know is right here.
Exactly. And so I learned from my mistakes. And then I hired the best DWI lawyer, who we're going to have him on at some point. But he saved my life, man. And so now he inspired me to save others' lives. And so basically, and I made a mistake, but literally what my situation was it's been expunged. You won't find any record of it, obviously, but it's it was just a bad fucking night, and it was a mistake, and I paid dearly for it. And it was what it was. But luckily, I was able to avoid any kind of like massively serious repercussions because I had good counsel. And a lot of people just don't have that ability, either because they can't afford it. Mostly always because they can't afford it. It's a financial thing. So that's why, like, when I take a case, I always try and work with people. I always put them on a payment plan or give them some sort of reassurance that I'll be able to work with them. Because, like, look, most people don't have 10, 15 grand lying around. I mean, they just don't. I mean, the average individual, I think I read, can't even afford a $400 like emergency expense, like you need tires or something like that, So that severely limits who's going to be able to afford a competent lawyer, and B, it's going to clog up the justice system with a bunch of lawyers who just want to plead cases, right? So I've met a bunch of lawyers that are, been in the business 20 years and they never tried a case. So, and what I do, the way you stake your reputation and make, some real moves in this life is by trying and winning cases. And you've got to have a lawyer who's competent with a jury and that you would trust to stand up in front of people and put your life in their hands. And
it's like I think, I don't know, it's like a parable. It's a universal thing. Like, the more you're detached from, for example, like a lot of times when you learn how to fight, when you learn self-defense or whatever, the fact that you know how to fight often means that you end up getting into less fights, right? So, like, the fact that you're not afraid to threaten going to trial or whatever,
man.
It gives you courage in that situation. So then whenever you're dealing with most lawyers who don't want to go to trial, like, the fact that you're ready for trial, how to standardize the officer's manual or whatever. So I mean, if anyone ever, you can call their bluff, right? So
that's it, man. And that's the thing, is that most lawyers aren't going the extra mile. They don't know all the shit that they need to know. And unfortunately, it's the good ones that can combine the knowledge and the personality. And you have then the people that, are going to make names for themselves because they aren't scared. And yes, like, when I walk into a courtroom, most DAs are going to roll their eyes because they know that I'm going to fucking annoy the hell out of them. And I'm going to just be like, all right, let's go, baby. Like, get your witnesses. I know they're not coming. And then they're just going to be like, fuck you, man. And so that's literally what ends up, like, I get to go to a job where we get to say fuck you to each other. And it's like in good spirits. And it's not personal. I mean, it truly isn't. Sometimes some DAs make it personal. I've had ones that are like, 99% of the district attorneys I work with are really good people, and they are just trying to get trial experience and do their jobs. And but like they understand that we are like actors more than we are lawyers. We have to make what we do relatable to the common man, because that's how we get our point across, is through 6 or 12 common men at a time, or men or women. And you know, if you don't have a lawyer that knows that what the fuck they're doing, you should expect to get a shitty deal.
And for example, when you go to court date and your court date gets reset 18 times, that's because neither lawyer is willing to go to trial at that point, but they still can't come to an agreement on the settlement, right? So whenever you do have a lawyer who's like, you know, who's ready to go to trial, it speeds up that you can get everything behind you, and until your shit's you get the original case taken care of, you can't even deal with expungement and all that until like 6 months after your, you know, thing gets taken care of, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a classic example of what happens, right? You get arrested and you can't afford a lawyer, so they appoint you one, but you end up getting a really shitty court-appointed lawyer, right? For whatever reason. You know, a guy where you're just like, man, you know, you're fucked when you walk into the courtroom and you see.
Dude, I've had those, bro. I've had like
you can judge like, hey, their tie is either not a bolo, or it's gonna be halfway up their chest. They've got shoes that are like 50 years old, and they just like, there's dandruff all over their suit jackets. They're not an American flag blazers. How could you fucking trust this person, right? So you've got, you know, it's truly just a luck of the draw situation when you're forced into that and you don't know who your lawyer is, or he's some shitty dude. So you've got, he's going to take a year just to get the stuff he needs from the state, whereas I can get it in a couple of weeks, or I subpoena it directly. You know, and then you're just dealing with constant resets, and you have to keep going back to court, and your life is disrupted. You might lose your job. Like, if you don't have a good lawyer, I mean, it truly does screw you, because it's sad. I walk through the courthouse and I know that my guys are going to be fine. They got me, but like, a lot of the people sitting in those lobbies are just fucked. And it does truly have to do with who your lawyer is.
Dude, I know I've had like a court-appointed lawyer, and you know, and I was literally telling him what to do. Like, no, dude, you should go back and ask. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Actually,
like,
I googled this, and the law says that you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, he was like, no, the best you can do is we can get you probation. I was like, are you fucking stupid? Like, I didn't even do it.
I'm not setting this for trial, man. I gotta go golfing on Friday. What the fuck are you doing?
Exactly. They'll literally, like, you could tell everything. You could be like, I'm not guilty, and they'll be like, no, we're gonna go for probation. I got you a great deal. Like, they always start with
I got you a great
deal, bro.
Look, dude, they teach you that when you have shitty mentors, and that's the big difference, is that law schools these days, it's not like med school, right? You don't have a residency. You don't get trained on how to lawyer. Law school is just a massive money grab for these schools for the most part, because they don't teach you how to be a lawyer. They teach you the law by a bunch of like winded dickbags that make way too much money in retirement, and now they just teach because they hit a big case, right? Like, I was taught civil procedure by the legend Bill Dorsanio at SMU. The dude was a nutbag. And I actually don't even know if he's still there, but he was awesome, because like, he was the guy that wrote Dorsanio's litigation guide, and anyone that's a practicing litigator has heard of that. And so to get taught by the best. I mean, but the thing is like, the best, the dude would stand in front of the classroom and he was senile. He'd had like 4 strokes. So he's like, you guys need to learn how to bribe the judges. He's like talking to us. He's like, yeah, none of this is how it actually works. You need to have lunch with the judges, and that's how you win the cases. And so I'm sitting there as like a 1L in basic civil procedure, and this guy's like teaching us to bribe judges. He's got tenure. They're not going to fire him. He's Bill Dorsanio. He's the man. And so, like, you know, it was just, when you don't get taught how to actually practice, like, luckily for me, I did a criminal clinic. So that's shit where we're getting cases for the law students. It's the stuff that even the public defenders doesn't want. Fried chicken guy, for instance, where I bought this square briefcase. It was like $20 on eBay. I had a can of Lysol in it and and some folders. And like, that's what I bring to the courthouse every day. And like, it was just going to jail and going to court. And I was learning the grind. And two of my really good mentors, Mike McCollum and Brooke Busby, they practice up in Dallas County. They were incredibly gifted teachers. They were the ones that honestly, I learned more from them. I took a class, for instance, like third year of law school, taught by these two U.S. attorneys. Phenomenal class. It was about the Timothy McVeigh case. And we actually got to meet Stephen Jones, who was the criminal defense lawyer who represented Tim McVeigh. And I got to ask him questions and stuff. So it was awesome. But the reason that I knew that I was destined for criminal defense and not government is we were tasked in our final with giving a closing argument. And I lit this fucking close up with the defense. And I was self-depreciating. I was funny. And these two squares didn't even laugh. They're like, what? Well, why would you self-depreciate? You should never put yourself in a vulnerable confirmation with the jury. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? That's how you become relatable. Like, I'm the common man. What the fuck? And so that's when I knew. I was like, fuck, man, I can't work for the government. Like, I just, it's too square, and I'm two shades of gray. You know, I'm not black and white. Like, I operate in the gray areas of life. And, you know, I think that suits my personality, and it suits my clients winning, because I'm able to not only demonstrate a mastery of like the field sobriety test or whatever, but I'm also able to do it in a way that either makes fun of a cop. Like, for instance, I had a trial once where a cop got caught texting on his mobile data terminal logs, like, LOL, at least we're going to get this kid for a felony. I blew it up onto a full poster board and I'm handing it to the jury and I'm questioning the officer, and he just completely loses his credibility, and they lost the case right there. I mean, it's just stuff like that where you've got to dig through the details in order to really be successful in this job. And you've got to have a solid private investigator who's going to go and do some dirty digging, because as much as we hate to admit it or deny it, some officers lie. And so when that happens, you've got to do your own due diligence to protect your client. You know, I've got cases set for trial now where it's a he said, she said. And like, I have got to balance a fine, delicate line between going after police officers and then there's the difference between holding them accountable and then going after them. I think like this entire disband the police thing that we're seeing recently, for instance, like that's never going to happen. If you did that, all that the rich people would do is hire their own private militias, and then they probably wouldn't have as fair of a justice system as we do now, right? Where there's zero accountability.
I think the defund the police thing is like, if anything, they need more training. You know what I'm saying? It's not. That's
it. We need more social workers and less less MMA. You know, we need people who are willing, because the large majority of this stuff that goes awry is mental health. And that's another massive fucking issue that is unaddressed in the court systems, especially, is and addiction, drug issues. I mean, all of that stuff. You know, we could keep a ton of our jails cleared if we just had social workers or, you know, licensed professional like psychologists that would travel around with these police officers. And there's a lot of beta programs that are actually happening right now where they're doing that, and there's finding a lot of success. So if that's the case, then that is, instead of the defund the police, like, we've lost all sense of moderatism in this country, man. We've lost critical thought. It's like it's my side or your side, it's us or them. And
I honestly I give
danger in that, man.
I give a lot of, I don't know,
we're turning into 1984 if we go that way,
dude. I don't know if it's because of maybe I just didn't notice it before, but I do give a lot of credit to Trump, bro. Like, he really just broke the public media. Like, there's no objective journalism anymore. Or maybe I was too young to like see it before.
Well, hey, look, man, that's a good point. Like, I was a kid. I'll give you like a brief example, right? Like, I was an atypical teenager. most kids want money so they can get a bike, like, and do cool stuff, or like how go out, like whatever. Like I wanted money to invest in the stock market, right? I was that kid that was interested in never making money for someone else. I hated corporations, right? And so I wanted to make money off of them, obviously. So, I mean, the way that like, I would get the newspaper. I have read the physical newspaper. I still get it literally to my house every single day. I am probably the only fucking millennial that actually does that, honestly. But I think it was important because I needed to know what the people were believing. I know that the media at this point, when they updated the Smith-Mundt Act in 2015, basically it allowed the three-letter agencies to get involved in the media. So, I mean, you've got direct propaganda efforts on both sides, whether you got CNN on or Fox News. Like I have two TVs in my living room. Sometimes I put on Fox News on the top, CNN on the bottom. And I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense why all of you are all hating each other. I mean, if you have it on and you don't actually get out on the street and you talk to people like reasonable adults, then of course you're going to have the illusion that everything is completely fucked.
Yeah, I mean, because it used to be like Fox News was like deliberately right, and then like MSNBC was deliberately left, and then
it's
like
thin, man. It's like you pick a side.
there were, I mean, like BBC and things were like there were a lot of stuff.
But here's the thing: is that journalism, and I think it really happened after 2000. I mean, we had a massive shift after the advent of the internet, and I mean, I think with technology,
it's got everything is shock value now,
right? Like people stopped trusting in print media because it went online, and so it became easier to manipulate. And so once we all went from citizens to being data centers, we're all just data portals now for these companies, right? So that's all we are to them, is data. And unfortunately, lesser educated people are very easily manipulatable, and it's just going to be a way easier to throw them easy wedge topics that they're obviously not going to be able to see through.
Right. There's
the bullshit that they're both, these people, Pelosi and McConnell, probably are getting together in the back room fucking laughing at all of us. You know, I mean, that makes sense at this point. It's why nothing ever gets done. The status quo is there to keep the current system in place. I mean, it doesn't get any clearer than that if you actually look around and see why nothing ever fucking changes in this country.
Cool.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Texas Law Dog podcast, where we will get you off literally and legally. Please tune in next week for another episode with insights about how the criminal justice system operates, and tune in. We got a couple of special guests that will be coming up pretty soon, and a lot of fun things happening for the podcast. So we appreciate your support. Please come back next week. Subscribe, like, share, and for the love of God, please don't text me your opinions on this. Thank you.